Front, two technicians are explaining the cause of slow cranking and high current draw. Technician A says an engine bearing could be the cause. Technician B says the starter motor armature could be binding or defective. Who is right? Back. Both A and B. Tech A is right because both mechanical problems like tight or seized engine bearings can cause an engine to fail to crank and crank slowing with high current draw due to excessive resistance. Tech B is also right because excessive starter resistance will be caused by a binding or defective field coil. Front, electromagnetic interference (ME). Back, radiation interference that occurs when an induced voltage enters another system's wiring. Front, Hall effect switch. Back, the sensor operates by moving a magnetic field relative to a semiconductor, creating a square wave output usually used to determine position. Named for Edwin H. Hall, who discovered the Hall effect in 1879. Front, Ohm and R.S. Quo's law. Back, a set of formulas that expresses the relationships among voltage, current, and resistance in an electric circuit. Front, open circuit voltage test. Back, measuring battery voltage from positive to negative with a DMM and no load. Front, bench testing. Back, method of removing a component from the vehicle and testing it on a workbench using the proper tools and equipment. Front, ohm meter. Back, a meter that measures the resistance to current in ohms W. Front, what is the first and most important step when servicing an airbag? Back, disconnect the battery negative cable. To prevent accidental deployment of the airbag, disconnect the battery negative cable to disable the airbag system. Front, intermittent problem. Back, a problem that only occurs when certain conditions are present, also called intermittent failure or soft failure. Front, clock spring. Back, electrical current is provided to the airbag through the spiral cable, which is also known as a coil or clock spring. Front, a technician connects one lead of a DMM digital multimeter to the positive plus terminal of a battery and the other meter lead to the B terminal of the starter solenoid and then cranks the engine. During cranking, the voltmeter displays a reading of 878 millivolts. Technician A says this reading indicates the positive battery cable has very high resistance. Technician B says this reading indicates that the starter armature is defective. Back. Of only, technician A is correct because voltage drop should be less than 0.2 volts, not 0.878 volts or 878 millivolts. Technician B is wrong because this test does not test the integrity of the armature, which is done through Front, Central Processing Unit CPU. Back, the brain or main processor in a computer. Front, ammeter. Back, a meter that measures current in amps. An electrical test instrument used to measure amperes, unit of the amount of current flow. Front, hydrometer. Back, a device that measures the specific gravity, weight or density of electrolyte in a battery is a measure of the general charge level of the battery, also called a battery charge indicator. Front, when jump-starting a vehicle using jumper cables with a dead battery, what is the correct procedure? Back, connect plus positive to plus positive and negative to negative. You always connect plus positive to plus positive and negative to negative. Front, conventional current theory. Back, a theory that says that electrons flow through a circuit from positive plus to negative. Electrons leave the positive terminal of the battery, flow through the circuit, and then re-enter the battery through the negative terminal. Front, driver information system, DIC. Back, a vehicle communication system that uses a small speaker, computer, and numerous sensors to inform the driver of vehicle conditions. A system that employs the numerous sensor inputs to the engine control system powertrain control module (PCM), in addition to vehicle mileage to accurately calculate when the oil needs changing. This allows the software to take into account temperature, highway or city driving, extreme ambient temperatures, and other factors in making the decision. An oil change indicator tells the driver that an oil change is needed. Front, why should the lights be turned on when checking for ripple voltage or AC current from the alternator? Back, create electrical load. Checking for ripple measures the integrity of the alternator internal components and must be tested under load with system on to measure voltage. The battery must be at 75% charge for this test. Front, headlamp aiming. Back, adjusting the bulbs of headlamps so they are pointing at a specified height and direction in front of the car. Front, two technicians are explaining how to adjust the drive belt when replacing an alternator. Technician A says on a serpentine belt, the tension is adjusted by moving the tensioner up or down. Technician B says to recheck tension run the engine for 1 hour to see if the belt is in the specified range for a used drive belt after the alternator has been replaced. Who is right? Back, neither A nor B, both are wrong. Technician A is wrong because tensioner systems are automatic and not adjustable. Technician B is wrong because you generally check tension after 15 minutes, not 1 hour. Front, a technician is checking the continuity of a 30-amp circuit breaker in a power convenience system with a DMM digital multimeter. Technician A says the current from the ohm meter will close the circuit breaker. Technician B says the ohm meter should read OL out of limits or resistance infinity if the circuit breaker is good. Who is right? Back, neither A nor B, both technicians are incorrect. Technician A is wrong because the DMM has 10 megohms of impedance and will not affect circuit components. Technician B is wrong because if the breaker is good, the resistance will be very low. Front, alternator. Back, a device in a vehicle that produces current by changing the spinning motion of the alternator pulley mechanical energy into electrical energy. The alternator feeds the electrical energy to the battery and other electronic systems, also called a generator. Front, voltage. Back, the electrical force, or pressure, that pushes free electrons and causes current. It is also referred to as electromotive force (EMF) or potential difference. Front. The code BL on a wiring diagram means what wire color? Back. Blue. The wire color code for blue is BL. Front. Ohms. Back. The electrical unit for resistance and represented by the omega symbol. Front. Technician A says proper starter operation depends on the battery being at a 95% charge and battery cables being of the correct size gauge and having no more than 0.8 volt drop. Technician B says voltage drop testing includes cranking the engine, measuring the drop in voltage from the battery to the starter, and measuring the drop in voltage from the negative terminal of the battery to the engine block. Who is right? Back. B only. Technician A is wrong because the battery charge state should be 75% not 95% and the cable voltage drop should be less than 0.2 volts not 0.8 volts. Technician B makes a correct statement. Front. Capacitance. Back. A term used to measure or describe how much charge can be stored in a capacitor condenser for a given voltage potential difference. Capacitance is measured in farads or smaller increments of farads such as microfarads. Front. Kirchhoff and R.S. law of voltage drops. Back. Sum of the voltage drops in any circuit will equal the source voltage. Front. Charging system output test. Back. A test that measures system current and voltage under maximum load current output. Front. Voltage drop measurement voltage drop tests. Back. A measurement taken with a voltmeter that determines the internal resistance of a wire or component without having to disconnect the circuit. Also called a voltage drop test. Front. Technician A says when checking a non-working component, one should check downstream from the component for an open circuit. Technician B says you should use an ammeter to check for an opening in a circuit. Who is right? Back. Neither A nor B. Technician A is wrong because you check upstream at the source for an open circuit. Technician B is wrong because you use an ohmmeter to check if an opening is suspected due to an inoperative component. Front. Charging system. Back. A system that forces current back through the battery to recharge it and also provides electricity for all of the vehicle's electric devices when the engine is running. This system serves as the electric power supply under normal operating conditions. Front. If the battery terminals are corroded, what tool is used to remove the battery cable? Back. Battery connector puller. A battery connector puller is the appropriate tool because the other tools can damage the battery post and require a replacement battery. Front. What type of solder is required to repair the instrument panel wiring? Back. Rosin core. Rosin core is the specified type of solder to use on any electrical repair to ensure integrity. Front. Connector. Back. Plastic or rubber device with metal terminals or connection points for two or more wires. Many connectors have locking clips that hold the connectors together, ensuring a good electrical connection. Front, rosin core solder. Back, a type of solder that contains flux lead-free cleaning agent inside the solder. Front, resistance. Back, the opposition to free electron flow. It is represented in formulas and diagrams by the letter R. Front, digital multimeter (DMM). Back, a multimeter that uses a vacuum fluorescent or liquid crystal display to give a digital readout and measures volts, ohms, and amperes. Front, Technician A says you do not have to solder a repaired wire. Technician B says wire insulation damage is sometimes found where the wire passes through an opening in a metal part. Who is right? Back, B only. Technician A is wrong because the standard repair practice is to solder wiring repairs due to the electronics used. Technician B is correct because wire insulation damage is sometimes found where wire passes through an opening in a metal part. Front, American wire gauge, a WG system. Back, a system used to indicate the diameter of conductors. A smaller number or wire gauge denotes a larger conductor diameter, and vice versa. This system was designed for solid wires. Front, electron flow theory. Back, a theory that says electrons leave the negative terminal of the battery, flow through the circuit, and then re-enter the positive plus terminal. Front, parallel circuit. Back, a circuit that has more than one path for current. Front, adaptive cruise control. Back, an enhanced cruise control system with the ability to sense and react to forward traffic. Front, keep alive memory, CAM. Back, memory that stores input failures and diagnostic codes and allows the computer to have an adaptive strategy as parts wear and components deteriorate. The information stored in CAM allows the computer to maintain normal vehicle performance with abnormal inputs from sensors. It gives the computer the ability to ignore false inputs to maintain good drivability. Front, cranking amps CA. Back, same as cold cranking amperes CCA. Except temperature at which the amperes are measured is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and not 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Cranking amperes is an indication of a battery's ability to crank an engine for 30 seconds at a temperature of 32 degrees Fahrenheit without battery voltage dropping below 7. Front, keep alive memory, CAM. Back, memory that stores input failures and diagnostic codes and allows the computer to have an adaptive strategy as parts wear and components deteriorate. The information stored in CAM allows the computer to maintain normal vehicle performance with abnormal inputs from sensors. It gives the computer the ability to ignore false inputs to maintain good drivability. Front, cranking amps CA. Back, same as cold cranking amperes CCA. Except temperature at which the amperes are measured is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and not 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Cranking amperes is an indication of a battery's ability to crank an engine for 30 seconds at a temperature of 32 degrees Fahrenheit without battery voltage dropping below 7. Front, two technicians are discussing a typical non-electronic fuel gauge. Technician A says if the ground wire connection to the fuel tank sending unit becomes rusty or corroded, the fuel gauge will read full or near full. Technician B says if the power lead to the fuel tank sending unit gets grounded, the fuel gauge should go to empty. Who is right? Back. Neither A nor B. Both technicians are wrong. Technician A is wrong because high resistance at the ground connection from corrosion will cause the gauge to read empty, not full. Technician B is wrong because if the fuel tank sending unit gets grounded, the gauge should read full, not empty. Front. Connector diagram. Back. A diagram that shows the location of connectors and identifies each terminal in a connector. These diagrams are useful when trying to diagnose electrical problems. Front. Bendix drive. Back. An inertia-type starter engagement mechanism. Front. Technician A says a voltage drop test of the charging circuit should be performed when current is flowing through the circuit. Technician B says to connect the leads of a voltmeter to the positive and negative terminals of the battery to measure the voltage drop of the charging system. Who is right? Back. Of only. Technician A is correct because current must be flowing to measure the drop or resistance in the circuit. Technician B is wrong because connecting the meter across the battery shows battery voltage drop per state of charge and not charging circuit voltage drop, which is done at the output terminal of the alternator. Front. Full hybrid. Back. A hybrid vehicle that uses all electric energy to initially accelerate and propel the vehicle. Its internal combustion engine only runs when the HV battery pack becomes almost fully discharged. Full hybrids can accelerate normally, not full throttle, without consuming fuel or emitting exhaust emissions. Front. Cold cranking amps CCA. Back. A rating indicates how much current the battery can deliver for 30 seconds at 0 degrees Fahrenheit -17. 8 degrees Celsius while maintaining a terminal voltage of 7.2 volts 1.2 volts per cell. This rating indicates the battery's ability to crank a specific engine, based on starter current draw, at a specified temperature. Front. The fuse controlling the brake and turn signal lights on a vehicle pulling a trailer constantly fails. Technician A says low voltage at the flasher unit or the wrong flasher could be the cause. Technician B says the fuse is not the right amperage for this combination. Who is right? Back. B only. Technician A is wrong because an incorrect flasher will not typically blow fuses. Technician B is correct because high amperage will blow fuses. Front. Breakout box. Back. A device used to check the electrical values at specific points in an electronic circuit. It is typically used as a last resort to finding electronic faults that cannot be found by other means. Front. Fuse jumper wire. Back. Jumper wire with a fuse in series used for testing live circuits. Front. Voltmeter. Back. An electrical test instrument used to measure volts, unit of electrical pressure. A voltmeter is connected in parallel with the unit or circuit being tested. Front. Alternating current ASE. Back. Electron flow in alternating directions. An electrical signal in which current and voltage vary in a repeating sequence above and below zero. Front, diode. Back, an electronic device that allows current to flow in one direction and be blocked in the other. Front, centrifugal belt retractor. Back, part of a vehicle restraint system that uses centrifugal force to keep the seat belt from extending. If you pull on the belt hard enough, the rapid centrifugal force engages the locking mechanism so the belt holds the driver or passenger in the seat. Front, conductor. Back, a substance that allows the flow of free electrons. Most metals are good conductors. Examples include gold, silver, copper, and iron. Front, using a DMM digital multimeter. A fully charged 12-volt battery should indicate how much voltage on the open circuit voltage OCV test. Back 12.6 volts. The standard is 2.1 volts per cell and 2.1 times 6 is 12.6 volts. Front, reference voltage. Back, voltage supplied to a sensor from a vehicle's computer. The sensor's effect on the voltage becomes a signal used by the computer as input data to judge the conditions at the sensor. Front, ground. Back, the terminal of a battery connected to a vehicle's frame. Front, open circuit. Back, a complete breaker disconnection in a circuit. Front, chassis ground. Back, a method of grounding a circuit that uses the metal part of a component to attach to ground. Front, two technicians are describing battery charging. Technician A says to remove the surface charge from a recently charged battery and apply a 300 ampere load across the adapters for 15 seconds. Technician B says to remove the surface charge from batteries, which have been in storage. Who is right? Back, of only. Tech A is right because to remove the surface charge from a recently charged battery, you apply a 300 ampere load across the battery for 15 seconds or turn on all electrical accessories. Tech B is wrong because you do not remove the surface charge from batteries, which have been in storage. Front, a vehicle is equipped with automatic folding mirrors. The owner complains that while driving, one mirror would fold in without the button being depressed. Technician A says the mirrors are out of adjustment. Technician B says that mirror had been manually pushed out and did not lock. Who is right? Back, B only. Technician B is correct because, typically, if the mirror is electrically folded inward and then manually pushed out, the mirror will not lock into position. The power folding mirrors must be electrically cycled outward, using the mirror switches to lock them in position. After cycling both mirrors inward and outward electrically, the problem will be solved. Front, two technicians are explaining how to service a fusible link. Technician A says to pull on each end to see if it stretches. Technician B says when a fusible link melts, it's always visible. Who is right? Back, of only. Tech A is right because if the wire stretches when pulled on, this shows a break in the fusible link wire. Tech B is wrong because when a fusible link melts, it is not always visible. Front, technician A says a loose serpentine alternator drive belt could cause overcharging. Technician B says undersized wiring between the alternator and the battery could cause undercharging. Who is right? Fact: B only. Technician A is wrong because a slipping belt will cause undercharging. Technician B is correct because undersized wiring will cause undercharging due to higher resistance. Front: Technician A says the Candy Controller Area Network Device Interface module used on GM vehicles will flash an LED rapidly if communication is detected. Technician B says late model vehicles use a jumper wire to connect 2 pins of the DLC data link connector to read diagnostic trouble codes on a scan tool. Who is right? Fact: of only. Tech A is right because a green LED light-emitting diode will flash rapidly when communicating with the ECM engine control module. Tech B is wrong because the practice of jumping 2 pins in the DLC data link connector has been obsolete since 1996. Front: 2 technicians are explaining how to service an audio entertainment system. Technician A says that braided ground wire is best for a repair and installation to help reduce interference. Technician B says to use a larger ground wire to reduce interference. Who is right? Fact: of only. Technician A is correct because braided wiring reduces ME electromagnetic interference. Technician B is wrong because a larger wire will not reduce interference and might increase it. Front: Battery pack state of charge SOC. Fact: the percentage of total charge in an HV battery pack. Front: system wiring diagram. Fact: a diagram that contains only the components and wires for a particular circuit. Front: pulse width modulation PWM. Fact: operation of a device by an on-off digital signal that is controlled by the time duration the device is turned on and off. Front: a defective halogen headlight bulb is being replaced. Why should you never touch the tip of a halogen bulb? Fact: oil from your finger can cause shortened bulb life. Oil from your skin leaves a residue on the glass shell to the bulb. When the bulb is turned on, it begins to get hot. Much of this heat is dumped into the air around the bulb and is carried away. However, when there is oil on the bulb, it begins to get heated as well. The heat is actually enough to cause oil to boil and its temperature can reach near 100 OF. This hot spot puts a great deal of heat near the glass bulb and can cause glass in the hot spot to warp and stretch. This causes a weak spot in the glass bulb which can break and thus shorten lifespan. The other choices will not happen. Front: full fielding. Fact: the method of supplying full battery voltage to the magnetic field of a generator as part of the troubleshooting procedure for the charging system full hybrid. Front: all the gauges in the instrument panel are inoperative. Technician A says to check the sending units. Technician B says to check the fuse for the instrument panel. Who is right? Fact: B only. Technician A is wrong because one sending unit would not affect all the gauges. Technician B is correct because the fuse would affect all gauges. Front: circuit number. Fact: the number, or number and letter that manufacturers use to identify a specific electrical circuit in a diagram. Front: soldering. Fact: involves using heat and solder to join electric components or wires. Front, solder. Back, an alloy mixture of metals that has a relatively low melting point. It comes in roll form for easy application to a joint. Front, Technician A says an aiming screen will work on any headlight designed to aim the headlights. Technician B says mechanical aimers are used on high-intensity discharge headlights. Who is right? Back of only. Technician A is correct because the aiming screen is the tool of choice due to the many different headlight designs used. Technician B is wrong because mechanical aimers are no longer used and were never used on headlights. Front, Kirchhoff and RS law of current. Back, current entering a junction is the same as the total of the current leaving the junction. Front, electrical feedback is usually a result of what condition? Back, poor ground. Poor ground is correct because electricity must pass through ground and, if it cannot, it feeds back to source. High voltage in the circuit and excessive current in the circuit will not cause feedback. Front, direct current DC. Back, electron flow in one direction only. Front, charge indicator. Back, an indicator that informs the driver about the operating condition or output of the charging system. Front, circuit. Back, a closed electrical path for current. Front, scope. Back, a piece of test equipment that displays voltages in relation to time. An oscilloscope may be part of a handheld scan tool or multimeter, or it may be a standalone unit, also called an oscilloscope. Front, scan tool snapshot. Back, an instantaneous scan tool reading of operating parameters that are present when a problem occurs. Front, electromagnetism. Back, a branch of physical science that deals with the interaction of electricity and magnetism. Front, a technician finds a blown fuse in the driver information circuit. What should he do next? Back, check affected circuit for a short to ground. The short to ground in the circuit will cause the fuse to blow due to the increased current flow through the circuit. Front, when using the ammeter function of a DMM digital multimeter, the red lead should be connected to what area of the connector? Back, side closest to positive side of battery. Based on Kirchhoff's voltage law, sum of voltage drops in any circuit will equal source voltage or voltage applied to circuit. Front, electromagnetic clutch. Back, a device used to disengage the drive belt from the air conditioning compressor. Front, scan tool. Back, designed to retrieve trouble codes from the computer's memory and to display the codes as a number and words explaining the problem. Also checks the operation of vehicle sensors, actuators, wiring, and the computer itself. They connect to a diagnostic link, or test terminal, on the vehicle. They measure voltages or computer signals, providing the technician with information about the condition of numerous components and circuits. Also called a diagnostic readout tool. Front, test light. Back, a piece of test equipment that is frequently used to check a circuit for power continuity. Most have a sharp probe for touching conductors and an alligator clip for grounding. Also called a continuity tester. Front. Technician A says to test for maximum current output. The battery must be loaded to force the generator to produce its maximum output. Technician B says after disassembly, all AC generator internal components should be tested using an ammeter. Who is right? Back of only. Technician A is right and Technician B is wrong because the tool to be used as an ohm meter as part of a DMM digital multimeter. Front, electromotive force EMF. Back, the electrical force, or pressure, that pushes free electrons and causes current. It is also referred to as voltage or potential difference. Front, amperes. Back, the